Yeah.
All right. So, Giorgio, that's how to say it?
It's Gergo, actually. Gergo.
Oh, a very hard gargo.
Yeah, it's yeah, this is hard.
Okay. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
You're the first student from Hungary. I've had many students from Eastern Europe around and other European places,
Mm,
but uh, not from Hungary. And so, welcome. Glad to have you.
thank you.
Uh, we had just begun to talk about the kind of practice that you have been doing,
Yes.
which is very similar then to the noting method of the Mahasi, of note what it is, note it again, take a look at it,
Yeah.
go deeper into it, see
Yes.
that dukkha. If you see that dukkha causing that dukkha, then you go look at that other dukkha too.
Yes. Yes.
And so the deeper you go, the more into the dukkha that you get. And this is what will lead to things such as were referred to in the West as dark night of the soul, which is actually way overblown. That normally what happens when people are practicing a dukkha form of meditation is that they wind up being afraid and dissatisfied and miserable, and they want to make a big change. When they really get dissatisfied and want to get out of it, that's when they have the opportunity to actually start practicing correctly. But some people will practice meditation for 50 years and not get dissatisfied enough to want to make a change.
Okay.
But you can, if you understand it correctly, start making those changes immediately
I would
and
love
take
to.
it here. Right. Okay. That's also what happens when people talk about it in the sense of choiceless awareness, to just be aware of what's going on. But that may work for the outside world to just observe what the outside world is doing and
Mm,
just remain choiceless about it. But that's not going to happen on the outside if it's happening on the inside, that you're
yeah.
choicelessly aware of all the suffering and the dukkha that you have,
Yeah.
but not making any
And it just keeps
choices.
coming up. It keeps coming up. And also, it's like what I feel is that the same things actually do come up. Maybe some days difference, but they don't dissolve. They don't disappear. It's just like one after the other, and they do come back. And then you are there again, witnessing them, but nothing happens to them.
Uh-huh. That's right. That, in fact, is the promise that the things will dissolve, but they don't
Yes.
until the practitioner recognizes that he has to make a change or that he does make the change without even recognizing it. And
Mm.
then he says, oh, they did dissolve. No, they didn't. You threw them out. That's how they
Okay.
dissolved, is you had to make a choice. You had to put some battery acid on them for them to
Mm.
dissolve.
Okay.
Things are not going to dissolve on their own. That, in fact, when we keep doing it over and over again, we're just building up the old bad habit. Doing the same thing wrong over and over again just puts us in the habit of doing it over and over again wrong and expecting new results. But the
Yes.
teachings of Buddha is much more like what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa said when I asked him about this very thing, because I was practicing that method. That at first you don't succeed, try again, just keep going. And he says, oh no, oh no. If at first you don't succeed, look at what you're doing. And that is a major change, to start looking at what we're doing rather
Mm.
than looking. Um, it's a subtle, different change. Instead of just noting the dukkha and just seeing what's going on in the mind, now we're going to draw back a bit and watch the fact that the mind is in dukkha. It's not wholesome thoughts that we're just
Yeah.
investigating or looking at unwholesome thoughts without seeing them that unwholesome. And if you can see them directly as unwholesome, then instead of continuing to have those thoughts, you'll throw them out. Oh, that is unwholesome. So basically, the first noble truth is not how well do you know dukkha and how deeply you've gone into it to see it. The better question is, how quick can you recognize something as dukkha so that you can avoid it?
Mm. Mm. Totally
That
makes
we're not
sense. Yeah.
Yes, that we're going to just see it
Because
enough.
the first one is like it's also like psychology, yeah. Psychology does that. Psychology gets to know dukkha, gets to know the mechanism of suffering and like how it's built up and everything, but it doesn't really help. People are
Mhm.
still suffering. They go to psychologists, they understand themselves better, but nothing actually changes, nothing substantial.
Right.
So something is
But
wrong,
it's
yeah.
also possible for them to go and see from the psychologist what they're doing, and then they can begin to be satisfied with the way things are, and that is the change. We
Mhm.
actually make the change, but
Mhm.
many of us, if we're making improvements, we make that change ignorantly. We
Mhm.
begin to do the right thing, but we don't even know that we have chosen to do the right thing.
Okay.
Here, we're going to consciously choose to make changes. That's the
Wonderful.
real effort
Mhm.
of the Buddha. The right effort is to make a change. Okay. So let's review the Eightfold Noble Path just a little bit so that we can get some
Okay.
context in here, because that's
Okay.
really what we're going to be practicing. And that the Eightfold Noble Path is just merely part of the Four Noble Truths. That in fact, it's in the sutras that the Buddha says more than one place and more than one time that he only teaches one thing. The only thing he teaches is dukkha, dukkha-nirodha. Just three words. The entire teachings of the Buddha is wrapped up into just one little phrase, dukkha, dukkha-nirodha.
Mhm.
Now that's three words. I like a four-word phrase, and that is, don't worry, be happy. We recognize the dukkha or the worry as dukkha, and we throw it out and be happy. That's all we need to do is just don't worry, be happy. But most people in the West, with the way that you were taught, is oh, you got to look at the dukkha, you got to see the dukkha, you got to make sure that you know what dukkha is.
Yes.
How deep into the dukkha do you go before you hit whatever there is that, well, now for the moment we'll call rock bottom? Because what is rock bottom is when you recognize that this is low enough. I don't need to go any further than that. We've got to get out of it. Okay.
Yes.
That's what they talk about when people go to AA, is because they've hit rock bottom. And
Yes,
some people do hit a rock bottom before they're willing
definitely.
to make a change. When they reckon,
Mm.
but when you recognize that you've sunk into dukkha as far as you're willing to go, that's your rock bottom. And now we're going to start making changes, because the
Wonderful.
direction that we're going is going to keep taking us deeper and deeper into even a deeper rock bottom. Is going That rock's going to get harder and harder, but there's no bottom to it
Wow.
until we make the decision that this is the bottom. And then now we got to do something about it. So this is very much intentionally oriented, not passive. That this is actually an active practice, this anapanasati, based upon the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Noble Path. So the real question is, how good at you are at seeing dukkha at a distance?
Mhm.
Can you catch it quickly enough? The example would be that you've got someone off in the woods there that's a good bowman, and he's got arrows, and he just shot an arrow at you, and you're not paying attention because you're looking over in this direction and the arrow comes from over there. And that arrow hits you and you get wounded, and you go to the hospital, and you got all kinds of problems because you got shot. But if you'd looked over at the time that that arrow was in the air, you could have dodged it. That's what we're going to be practicing, is to practice, is your sati fast enough so that you do not get hit with one arrow after another, after another, after another, a whole battery of them, that in fact we can see them as they're in the air and step out of the way.
What is
Well,
sati?
this
May I ask you? May I ask you what is sati?
sati is actually to remember,
Okay.
to
Mm.
remember to look at what's going on,
Lekapcsolod a hangot. Sorry. Yes. So that's
to
like
remember
when you practice the breathing meditation is the moment when you realize that you're actually listening to your breath, right? Instead of
when you
getting lost in
know
thoughts
that
and
you're right. Okay, so in the breath meditation, the Mahasi method is to just note the breath, to just watch it.
Mhm.
No, we're actually going to use the mind to control the breathing. But in order to control the breathing, we have to control the mind. And so this is an issue of control. This is not passive allowing anything to happen.
Yes.
We're going to make it happen. And how we make
Wonderful.
it happen is by taking long, deep breath. Now, it doesn't have to be super, super long or super, super deep. It just needs to be longer and deeper than normal breathing. That actually, if people are just watching the breath in a passive way, then the mind will run away from the breath very quickly, very easily.
Yeah, it's quite shallow. It's quite shallow and up
It's
here.
very
When you,
shallow.
yeah.
But if you
Yes.
grab hold of that thing, then it's unlikely for it to escape. And so we're going to take the Sati to remember that this is going to be intentionally a long, deep, easy, relaxed breath. And then we're going to remember that this out breath is a long, easy, relaxed out breath. And by doing it this way, we're actually getting better breathing going. That in fact, we begin to recognize that our life depends upon our breathing, and yet we don't pay much attention to it at all. That you could go for a month without eating, you go for a week without drinking water, you could go a whole lifetime without getting laid. Many thousands, millions of people went a whole lifetime without ever knowing what an automobile was. But every one of us can't go for 5 minutes without taking the breath. That's how important the breathing is, and yet we don't pay much attention to it at all. So
Yes.
now we're going to start paying attention to it with loving kindness in the sense of nurturing ourselves by breathing well to give ourselves that life. If we're taking good, natural, long, deep, easy breathing by mindfully intending to do that, the body becomes vibrantly alive, tingly alive. We bring the body up. But meditation, people think of it going deep into meditation. We're not going down. We're not digging holes. We're floating off into the wild blue yonder.
That's actually so true. So true. That people think of meditation as like wanting to penetrate something or like just get to the bottom of it, just finally reach something
Uh-huh.
with our
And we're,
minds piercing through.
and we're going to practice getting away from it all, getting away from all of that.
Sounds so relieving. Really does.
Yeah, right. A lot of people have that insight. Gosh, why was I practicing going deep into suffering when all I have to do is just not step in? Check it out, see what's coming before we get into it. Or the worst though that happens is we have an unwholesome thought and feel bad, and then we'll repeat that unwholesome thought and feel bad, and then we repeat that unwholesome thought and getting it all. An example of that would be writing an email to your boss, or maybe rehearsing an argument that we had with Aunt Susie.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that we rehearse and go over and over and over again all of these unwholesome thoughts, which means that we've been spending much of our lives talking ourselves into feeling bad. But now it's time to remember that we've got a choice and that we, in fact, can talk ourselves into feeling good.
Amazing.
That's what we're going to practice is to remember, to wake up, to recognize that we have a kind of a job to do is to look at what the mind is doing. To recognize what is dukkha and what is not dukkha. And if we see that it's dukkha, the Buddha actually had a phrase for this. His phrase was, aha, I see you, Mara. Well, that aha, I see you, Mara is a very happy, glad way of talking, as opposed to, oh no, here it comes again,
Yes, yes,
which is the way that
yes.
most Westerners think about it. When they say dukkha, they say, oh no, here it comes again, which means that it strikes them. But if you can have it in the mind and then you can see it, and then you say, aha, I see that dukkha, it's already being chased out. And that's what we want to do. Aha, I see you, dukkha. And then we take a deep breath. Wow, I'm glad I don't have to think about her anymore. I can be here
Yes,
and just take it
yes.
easy. I don't have to worry about that. So whatever we're worried about, that means that's a repetitive, unwholesome thought. It's repetitive over and over again, and it's unwholesome because it doesn't make us feel wonderful and beautiful and nice. It makes us feel like we've got work to do.
Yes.
So the actual way of them thinking of it is, aha, I see you, Myra, is the only work that needs to be done, is to wake up, take a look at it, and then change our attitude from, oh no, there it is again, into, aha, I got this wired. I can handle this.
I
And
really
so,
like this approach. It doesn't have any weight. It's not heavy.
well, this is the Eightfold Noble Path. This is the Buddhist approach. How Western mentality has so messed it up, I'm not really sure. That's the way that we mess it up, is we don't recognize that, because it's actually right there in the sutras, it's very clear that any unwholesome thoughts that are in the mind, recognize them as unwholesome. It takes the right effort to change those thoughts from unwholesome to wholesome thoughts. In
Mhm.
sutta after sutta, the Buddha talks about the 5 hindrances, the pasanarva, and yet the Mahasi method teaches you to continue to practice meditation while the mind still has hindrances in it. Where it's very clear in the sutras, you got to get free from the hindrances, and then the noting has some value. In other words, when we're actually noting, if we're noting unwholesome things, then that's what our life is. But if we spend our time noticing wholesome things, then that's a whole new life of just looking at
Mhm.
what's wholesome. As it arises and passes away in myriad, manifold ways, everything is okay, everything is wholesome, everything is fine. But
Do you
that's a
think that
real change.
do you think that this period of like falling into dukkha is needed for people to like wake up from it and like decide that they don't want it anymore? I mean, like this period of trying to be aware, like
Ah,
choicelessly and
yes,
falling.
I would agree to that. But then the question is, how deep into it do we have to go?
Yes,
Where
yes,
is our
yes,
rock bottom? That
yeah.
in fact, just putting my toe into battery acid is enough for me to say, hey, I'm not going to do that. In fact, I don't even want to put my toe in it. I want to test it first.
I
But
think
most
that very
people
much.
jump this whole hog right into it. Oh, this is meditation. Let me just jump into that big vat of battery acid.
Yeah, yeah, I did that. Yeah, but I think it also depends on what kind of people you meet in your life. Because for me, for example, having the talk with Alex yesterday changed lots of things, and we were just discussing it briefly, and then he pointed me to your videos, and then I felt like a relief, like something like, yeah, it's actually nice to just be calm, be chill,
Okay.
take it easy. But maybe some people just don't meet this type of practice like ever, or maybe it takes years, and they go follow the wrong direction.
Well, actually, they're following the direction that they're taught,
Yeah.
and they continue to do that, and sometimes developing some really good skills. One
Hmm.
of the skills that they do develop is the skills to wake up and take a look, but they're not
Yeah.
developing the skill to do something about it. Nor are
Yes.
they developing the skill of the right attitude of, I can do this. But it's actually quite possible. In fact, it's noted in the literature that when people hit rock bottom, whatever that rock bottom is for them, that's when they make the choice, I've got to get out of this. And so they
Yeah.
make that choice on their own. And the better way of doing it is to recognize from the very beginning that we
Yeah.
got to make a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very
We don't
rare
have to,
that people do that. I think it's not so often because we are so
right?
conditioned to fall into the suffering and try to distangle it and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so this is what right practice is. The 4 uh, aspects of the Eightfold Noble Path. Those 4 things are: number 1, Sati, to remember to practice. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter what skills you have. If you don't remember, you may be the best, let us say, bricklayer in town, but you can't lay any bricks because you forgot to bring your tools.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the way that we think of it. Number one item is to remember. Number two skill is to remember to do what? To look, to really look at what's going on,
Mhm.
to recognize what is a pile of bricks and what is a wall and what is cement and all of that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
Which is basically, is this thought wholesome or not? Is this thought that I'm having right now? Because quite often you'll wake up and say, yeah, everything really is good. My thoughts are really all right. Things are good.
Great.
That happens occasionally. And the more that you practice, the more those kind of thoughts will be there when you wake up and check out what kind of thinking you got. Good to go. Got that one.
Mhm.
But in the beginning, most of the time when we wake up to look at what we're thinking, it's an unwholesome thought. We're judging it anyway. That in fact, we get really judgmental with ourselves, and that most of the unwholesome thoughts are about some rule or some criticism. That
Yes.
this is good, but this is better. I like
Yes.
this, I don't like that.
Totally.
Okay. And
Totally.
so
Yes.
it's got to do with craving and longing and
Yes.
wanting and grasping, but it's also that grasping is done according to a set of rules, set of standards. In other words, what you should want is what you want. But if you don't have the rule about you should want that, now you don't have to want it.
Yes. That's true.
Okay. So
Everything that
the
do you
should,
think everything we want is kind of like learned? You just learned it?
well, absolutely. That when a child is born, is more or less born as a clean slate. Now there is some genetic stuff going on, but
Yeah.
the learning is all done, and learning is not necessarily receiving information. That's what they think of in school, is that the teacher has to stand out at the front of the class and spout juicy knowledge, and that's her job. And it's the child's job to absorb the knowledge,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not learning at all. That's why schools fail. What learning really is the ability to receive data, put it in place, figure out what value it has, and then put it to good use.
Mm.
So actually, it's not that the mother bird ate all of that fish. It's that she ate it and kept it so that she could regurgitate it and give it to her babies. It's not what comes in, it's what comes out,
Yeah.
the results. Okay, that's the important part of learning. If you learned it and it just stays inside and it doesn't affect anything, then it's no good.
Yeah.
But when you remember to apply it, to put it out
Yes.
there, now that's real learning. So this is
Yes.
why it's a
Yes.
learning process. The skill development is that we've got to put this stuff into practice.
Mhm.
We got to remember to take a look and make a change. And to change is from being dissatisfied into being satisfied. And we keep practicing that over and over again. We also
Mm.
bring in the mind and the breathing and the body with that, because we start paying attention to how nice this present moment is in sensory awareness. The body feels good, the wind is blowing, the shirt cloth is on the touch of the skin, we can feel the rising and falling of the chest, and everything is okay and in order, everything is fine. And so we begin to nurture the mind by telling
Mhm.
ourselves everything is okay, everything is fine.
Mhm.
This is not choiceless awareness. This is very choiceful,
Yes.
very
Yes.
choiceful. Instead of just letting whatever is in the mind go, no, we're going to say, aha, I see you, throw that out, and come back and talk to ourselves basically about this present moment, because this present moment is real. It's wholesome all by itself. I can breathe. I'm still alive. I'm not dead yet. It is important to talk to the students about that whatever you need or whatever you want, you could probably do without it for a while.
Mm.
For instance, if someone's hungry, well, they can go for a month without eating. If we're thirsty, we can go for days without drinking, but you're not going to go for 5 minutes without taking a breath. The breathing
Yeah.
keeps you alive. And so we could begin to get very grateful for how nice it is to stay alive by breathing well. And so we pay attention to the breathing. We put some skin in the game. The example of that would be that if you're watching someone else play a video game, then you may be watching, but you're not watching the very technical details of his hand movements for the mouse and when he clicks and all of that. You just see the results of the game. And if
Yeah.
somebody calls to you, you'll go pay attention to them. But the guy who's playing the video game, he's going to be in the game. He's not going to be easily distracted. This is the way that we're looking at the breath. We're going to actually treat the breath as if it were life-giving, a game. And we're not going to get distracted from that. We're going to start paying attention to what's going on in our little world, not in the sense of being involved with a video game, but here the video game is our existence in this moment, the location that we're in. That a lot of people think of the world as out there. We sometimes have the image when we think of the world as either an icon or a picture of the planet Earth, right? Something really big. But the reality is that your world is the world of your senses, is what you can see right now in front of you, what you can hear at a distance.
Sure.
So your world is at best 50 meters.
Yeah.
And the air in there is life-giving. And so paying attention to what's real is not paying attention to the world of ideas. That when we think of Chicago or Atlanta or Budapest is just a concept.
Yes. Yes.
Just a mental concept. That what's real is the four walls, the dartboard, the earphones, the clothes you're wearing. What's real for you is what you can touch, taste, hear, see, smell with the senses. And everything else is a mental construction.
Yes.
And so being in the reality of it is what we mean by Sati, to remember to look at the fact that we're caught up in our mental concepts. We're caught up in our criticism, in our critical thinking, and make a change into the nurturing thinking about how nice things are right now. These are the wholesome thoughts, and these would also be considered gladdening the mind. The gladdening the mind is to actually pay attention to what's so nice that's happening right now. The sun is shining, and the birds are singing, and the breeze is blowing. Yeah, it's hot, but I can handle that too. And everything is okay. And so this is the way we practice. But if we start thinking, oh, it's hot and I don't like it, maybe I should go buy an air conditioner. Now that's dukkha. Going shopping and spending money and plugging in electricity and using a bunch of electricity and then putting pollution in the air is just a vicious cycle because I don't like it when it's hot. In Thailand, they got a much easier solution to it. And that is, if it's hot, go take a bath, go take a shower. Taking your clothes off is optional. Why don't you just step into the shower with your clothes on and just get all wet and everything, and then you'll stay cool.
Yeah.
And taking a
Easy.
shower is very easy to do. It's easy, right? So you could think of it like this. There is once a book that I knew of way back in the 1970s that said, the title of it was The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment. Well, if you're lazy enough, you're already enlightened. So the guidance is to become lazy.
Okay.
And then you're already light. That when we're lazy, that means that we're not carrying a bunch of heavy things. We're not burdened down. Yeah. So set it down and be easy.
I'm quite lazy. I'm quite lazy, actually.
Well, this is probably the only place that you'll hear that that's the way to go. Being lazy, it's the way out of our society telling us that you're lazy.
Mm.
And we don't like that. We don't like being accused of lazy. So look at all the work that we're doing just to prove to ourselves that we're not lazy. And I'm saying, okay, I'm lazy. Isn't that marvelous?
It's really good to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. That you probably heard of the old show or statement of you don't work, you don't eat.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that? Yeah. Our society runs that way. Guess what? Millions of people don't work and they eat. Children, old people,
Yeah.
many millions of monks and nuns in all the various religions, they don't work and they eat. I'll tell you another group, and that is politicians.
Yeah.
Politicians at all,
Yeah.
but they eat.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, in that regard, we can find a way to where we don't have to work so much. And how we do that is by figuring out when we're doing work that's unnecessary. That, in fact, if we can change our attitude, it's not work anymore. In English, we have the word employment, which is kind of neutral, but the kind of words we use is job, work, labor.
Yeah.
Those are all uncomfortable things, and people do
Yeah.
those things.
Mm.
They work to eat. Well, he could do the same job. In fact, it's not a job. He could have the same profession, occupation, or employment, except now it's a joy. It's a toy.
Mhm.
Bricklaying does not have to be work, it can be fun. Painting a fence does not have to be work, it could be fun. That, in
Yeah.
fact, there's a very famous book by in America by Mark Twain,
Mhm.
and the name of the book is let's see, which one is it? It's Tom Sawyer,
Tom Sawyer. Yeah.
right? And in the book Tom Sawyer, his aunt tells him he's got to go paint the
Yes, I
fence,
remember. And he
and
takes
when
the
he's
prizes for giving the job away.
right, and when his friend Huckleberry Finn comes by, Tom shows him how much fun he's having,
Yeah.
and so Huck wants to do it too. And so Huck has a whole lot of fun painting the fence.
Yes.
All right.
Tom
So,
gets to go away.
well, that's how we should learn to live our lives. Fence painting is optional, but the point is not whether you do the job or not, it's how you feel about it. That if it's a toy, if it's a game, if it's fun to do, then we can put our skin into it and really get some benefit out of it. But if we do it because we're supposed to, or because we're supposed to look at the dukkha, because someday the dukkha will go away, it will dissolve. Now that's like painting the fence. That's a lot of work. That the only joy we're going to get is when the fence is painted completely, and now I can rest because the fence is completely painted. This is the way that we look at meditation also. Instead of let's just have fun doing the painting. We're not worried about whether we get finished or not. Another way of thinking about it is the difference between uh, uh, gaining a score right now that you scored and you score. What is the score? Aha, I see you, Mara. That's the score. That's the work that needs to be done, is to see the unwholesome thought.
Mm.
But we don't do it that way. In fact, what we're taught instead is not to score, but to keep score.
What do you mean by that?
To, to score and to write it down, and then to score again and make more points, and to
Yeah.
score
Yes.
again.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
to keep score. That's what we do in sports is they keep score, and then the score and the score keeping is more important than making the score. The
Yes.
making of the score is done right here in this moment, but scorekeeping lasts for years. A great source of argument and discussion and frustration when they could be just making more scores right now
Mm.
without keeping tally. So this is a way that we can begin to live our lives as we stop scorekeeping and just start scoring.
Can I ask you, what do you consider an unwholesome thought? Because there are so subtle thoughts, even like, like you wake up and you think, oh, I should do this. So maybe in 2 years I will have um, like a house, like whatever, like those conditioned thoughts. It's not always obvious what is unwholesome and what is not. How do you, how do you see that?
Okay. That's a good question for the beginners to ask. And
Mhm.
the answer is fairly complicated. So let's look at it in this way. Some thoughts are obviously and clearly unwholesome.
Yes. Like I'm not
So many
worthy or like
thoughts
I'm
like
bad.
that.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, or I'm going to get my revenge on that guy. I'm going to
Yeah.
finish that argument. I'm going to go to town and get what I want.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go rob the bank. I'm going to make plans to harm people.
Yeah.
These are obviously clearly unwholesome. All
Yes.
right. So that's the place to start with the unwholesome is things that are harmful, and we know that they're harmful, but we'll have those thoughts anyway, that we take some sort of gratification and delight in harming people.
Yeah. I can see that.
He did you
Yes.
dirty and you're going to dirty him up back.
Yes.
Uh-huh. So thoughts of revenge, thoughts of getting even, thoughts of justice. Those are all unwholesome thoughts. But thoughts of rehabilitating, thoughts of fixing things up, thoughts of patching up a friendship, those would be wholesome.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a place, in fact, that we can say that some thoughts are absolutely, without a doubt, wholesome.
Yes. I can see that too. Yes.
Okay. Like friendship, joy, thoughts of everything is okay, thoughts of the work that needed to be done has been done. Those are
Mhm.
the kind of thoughts that are wholesome, which leaves a huge, huge area in between. The thoughts of somewhere in between wholesome and unwholesome. And that this is now your job as the meditator as to where you're going to draw the line.
Mm. Mm.
Okay. And so we start way over there with almost everything is either wholesome or we're not sure, and we're going to start avoiding just the unwholesome that we can see. But as we train, we begin to start moving that um, balance point
Yeah.
to
I
more and more
understand.
wholesome. So
Mhm.
that's actually the answer to that is you're going to have to figure that out for yourself. But here's
So,
how you do that.
but also the system, as I understand you now, the system will get more sensitive, right? So it's more, as you purify it more and more, you will get a sense of it, and then you will become more sensitive to maybe
Right.
something is like a little unwholesome that you didn't see a year ago, and now you see that this is not what I want. Is it something like that? So
Yes,
like you
that's
purify it and
exactly
it's
right.
better and better. Okay.
Okay. Now, the Buddha talks about it like this in the sense that we do what we do because we get some sort of gratification.
Mm.
Even if we're groveling and apologizing, we do that to get some sort of gratification out of it.
Mhm.
Okay. We will bow and scrape to the emperor because we get to keep our head. So we do a
Yeah.
whole lot of really stupid things because we get some sort of advantage out of it. An example of that would be like Homer Simpson loves donuts. He gets great gratification out of eating them, so he eats the whole box full. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then he gets sick and he goes to the doctor. And the doctor says, "You're so fat, you're so overweight, you've got diabetics, you've got heart problems, you've got cholesterol. You're going to have to lay off the donuts." If Homer can hear that and get it, that donuts are dangerous, he'll begin to avoid them. He'll begin to plot his escape from them so that he doesn't think about donuts. He stays away from the break room where the donuts are. He doesn't
Mhm.
go down the aisle where the donuts are sold in the grocery store. So we begin to do it like that. So when we begin to see certain kinds of thoughts as unwholesome and unuseful for us, or better way of saying that when we see that the gratification that we have in some thinking has drawbacks, it has dangers.
Mhm.
And when we begin to see the danger, we can also see that sometimes the danger outweighs the gratification. Now that the danger, because we can see the danger, is growing bigger than the gratification, now we're willing to give it a go, give it a, throw it out. That
Yeah.
this is now seen as unwholesome because the danger of that kind of thought is dangerous. So here's an example of that is getting angry. Most of us get great joy and satisfaction out of being angry. It makes us feel powerful, not weak. It makes us feel like we're going to get our way.
Mhm.
In
Yeah.
fact, generally, when we are angry, we don't get our way. It makes us powerful only because the underlying is the fear. So the
Mhm.
one who is acting angry is almost always trying to put on the show of being powerful and strong, to where in fact deep inside he's a victim. He's
Mhm.
lost something. That we get angry when we're losing something or in the danger of losing
I
something,
can
about
see
to
that.
lose
I
something.
can see that. Yeah.
Okay, so when we begin to see the real issue, and we can recognize then that the anger has drawbacks. Anger is dangerous. It's in danger of destroying the relationship with the person. But in fact, if I'm angry at him, getting what I want from him is going to be remote. But if I'm very gentle and kind and friendly to him, he may give me what I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we begin to wake up to the things that used to give us gratification, and now we begin to see the dangers in them. We're willing to put them aside. So this is what the value of the Anapanasati is, to note what's the gratification and the danger. If we could see the unwholesome part of it, it's easy enough to throw it out. But when we only see the gratification in it and don't see the danger, that's when we'll keep doing it. And so, what students have in that kind of meditation, then, is that they get gratification out of wallowing in the dukkha.
I understand. Mm.
What gratification? Well, I'm at least making progress. I can at least see what the problems are.
But then the funny thing is that the thing that is getting the gratification is the dukkha itself, right? Because it can go on, and it can have the motion going on.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the whole danger of it, is that we don't get satisfied with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that we get not satisfied, but we get gratification. And so that's one of the skills that we begin to understand, is the distinction between satisfaction and gratification. We get gratified by taking revenge, but we're never satisfied.
Yeah. Yeah. This is true.
Okay. And so if we can become completely satisfied, then we don't need gratification, because we're
I
really
think
truly satisfied.
so. So then what? Then the things that you do, like maintaining a friendship or like taking care of your loved ones and things like that, then it's just out of like satisfaction, like love, but you don't expect to feel better from it, or it's not a
Um,
good feeling.
yes, you could say that satisfaction actually, you're looking for other words to describe it. But basically, satisfaction has the quality of, this is okay, this is good enough. It may not be perfect, it may not be great, but I'm satisfied with the way things are,
Mhm.
as opposed to being dissatisfied, which means we want things to be different,
Mhm.
which is dukkha. Wanting things to be different than they are is dukkha. Being satisfied with the way things are is sukha. So
I
how do
think
we do?
I
We
think that
do
the
that. Go ahead.
sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to say that I think that the choiceless awareness thing is like a great way to be okay with whatever shit show is going on in my mind and emotion and stuff, but it doesn't change the environment that I'm sailing in, you know? It doesn't change that the sea is
But
crazy.
the point is though it's a lot of work to be
Yeah.
satisfied with the shit show when the
Yes,
deep
exactly.
sea thing
Exactly.
to do
You could
is
change it.
just to throw the shit show out.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that now. Yeah.
And now,
I'm still trying to put the pieces together for myself. The difference between the two approaches. Yeah.
yeah, to really just change the mind, change the thought that we're having, and eventually we begin to change our attitude from the attitude of being a victim of the world into being a champion of your own mind.
Mm.
That you can
Mm.
handle this. It doesn't matter what happens with the world. If I see it coming, I can dodge it.
It's great.
All right. So let's finish now. I think that this has given you something that you could go with.
Yeah.
The next time
Yeah.
that you call, we can go a little bit deeper into Sati and the other parts of the Eightfold Noble Path.
Okay. That would be
Okay.
great. So what do
All
you
right.
think when should I call you again? In how many days?
I would say half a week to a week. Give it 2 or
Okay.
3 days. Get some practice in. Get some
Okay.
results. Get yourself into a state of satisfaction.
Yeah. Okay.
Or if you get yourself into a great deal of dissatisfaction, call me then too.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Dhammarato. It's great to meet you. It's been a nice
Yes.
time with you. 1 hour.
Ye-
It's great.
Yes, it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you. I will call you again then in some time. Have
All
a nice
right.
day. Goodbye.
Yes, we will see. All right. Bye bye.
Bye.